Be careful, Lisa.
No problem.
Thank you.
It's nice to see you. It's a little different, isn't it?
Actually,
Can you hear us? We dialed in, we're good? Yes, sir. But it's effective, it's not 30. Okay.
Welcome, everyone. At this time, I'll do the roll call. Nancy Baker.
here.
Ronnie Bill is not here, but he's given a proxy. Patrick Bettencourt.
Here, Mr. Chairman.
Gary Blevins.
I'm here.
Rick Bunio. Jack Kahn.
Here.
Ira Dove.
Here.
Jeannie Duncan. Jeff Heck. Jim Holland.
Here.
Billy Kennedy.
Proxy.
Okay, that's right. Kevin King, he's on my phone up there. Hey, Kevin. Paige Lamel,
Here.
Pat McGinnis,
Here.
Mike Norris. Here. Connie Orr,
Here.
Morris Pittman.
Here.
All right, Steve Smith.
Here.
Will Wakefield. Will, you on my phone?
Here.
Okay, great.
Yes, I'm on my phone.
Ashley Wooten
Here.
and Ashley Worth Bayer. Bayer,
Here.
is that correct?
There.
Bayer, okay. Welcome. Okay, we have a quorum, and welcome everyone. Okay, at this time, has everyone had a chance to review the agenda and the January emergency call and the board retreat meeting minutes? Glance at those. Would you feel like you're ready? We'll need a motion to approve all, if possible.
So moved.
All right, we got, I think we have a motion and a second and a third and a fourth. Mike Norris or Nancy, second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All right, unanimous. Okay, has anyone signed up for public comment? Okay, Mary Short.
Hey. Hi, I'm Mary Short. I'm from Alexander County, and this is Katie. So, there was a article in the Charlotte Observer on February 12th, and they were interviewing Cardinal Innovations Healthcare. So that's always a fun article to read. And I found the end of the article to be the most enlightening. And I hope that other families with IDD individuals really hear what it was that Trey Sutton, the CEO, says in this article. So they're talking about the Medicaid transformation and the move eventually to tailored plans. So, quote, "From my perspective, it's exciting," he said, "because we haven't been in a position to care for the whole person," end quote. That will change. That change is still a couple of years away. And for 4 years after that, LME MCOs such as Cardinal will have the playing field to themselves. In 2025, other nonprofits will be able to compete. For Sutton, that's a challenge. Quote, "We've got to get faster, we've got to get better," he said. "We've got to get more customer service focused, and we've got to have the provider network to support the needs of our members. They'll be able to vote with their feet." So it's so exciting for families of the IDD to finally, in 2025, maybe sooner if we do some work and lobby and write and contact the General Assembly, but boy, in 2025, we'll be able to vote with our feet. We won't be assigned to an LME MCO or a tailored plan. We'll be like the rest of the Medicaid population. We'll be free to choose, free. So I hope the rest of the IDD population gets on board with making choices. So then that led to this other article that I got probably through the AARP, I'm not sure. I get a lot of newsletters from a lot of different organizations. And the title of this article from an organization called Health Affairs, it's from their blog, The Rational Consumer. High disenrollment associated with poor quality performance among Medicare special needs plans. So I thought, well, gosh, this sounds like tailored plans, special needs plans, Medicare. So this whole article talks about how people with real special needs, like IDD, only this is for the aged in Medicare and other disabilities in Medicare, how they have now found over time that people with high needs actually leave Medicare Advantage and special needs plans and revert to the fee-for-service system because the Medicare Advantage and the special needs plans can't meet their needs. So onward and upward with tailored plans. Anyway, so at today's compliance committee or regulatory, whatever the name of this is, they did their grievances and complaints again, only, you know how I always complain about how the grievances and complaints per 1,000, how the IDD rate always seems to stay up around 10% versus the mental health substance abusers, which are down at like 3 and 1%. So they've eliminated that little chart. They're not telling you that information anymore. So I thought as a board, maybe you might want to know that. Anyway, thank you for letting me speak.
Thank you. All right, our next item is the conflict of interest disclosure. Call on Tracy Hayes, our general counsel, CPA.
This is the time during the board meeting, if any board member has a new, actual, or potential conflict of interest that has not previously been disclosed, you're here to do so. Hearing none, we can move on.
Thank you.
Someone may have just joined us.
It's Rick Williams.
Hey, Dr. Budio, welcome.
Thank you.
Okay, our next item on the agenda is board member portal electronic access. Who's going to, is Mickey going to do that? Okay.
Or
You
Robert?
want to do it, Mickey?
Okay,
No, sir, you
Rob-
got it.
Okay, Robert?
Thank you. So, a couple things have been going on over the last few months. We had talked about having a board portal, so you can have electronic access to the documents that are part of the packets that are passed out at each board meeting. This has been under development for a while. We've had a change in the way we've architected it. We originally had posted this portal so that we didn't have to issue you a login. You would use something you're already familiar with, and so that seemed to cause some conflict. So we've gone back and re-architected a little bit, and so we're going to actually assign user IDs and passwords for the board portal. Okay, and so Mickey's going to hand out a letter, an envelope, to each board member, and so inside that envelope is the site address, so you can type that in from any web browser, your username, and your initial password. And so obviously you want to hold this document very confidential until which time you can get to the point where you log in. Once you log in, you will be asked to reset that password. Okay, so then it will be unique to you. Okay, for those of you that got iPads today, or will be getting iPads, that process will reset your password for you, so you don't have to go through that process. So the temporary password you have in your envelope is now not good because you just changed it in the other room. Okay, does that make sense? So, real quick, I've got one of the iPads here hooked up to the screen, and I was going to do just a quick intro for those of you that got iPads. We tried to streamline this as much as possible, and so hopefully the enrollment process wasn't too complicated or too overbearing. But basically, the only thing that you have to do now is click on the iPad, and with your thumb, let me see if I can do it while I'm turned away. Once you did
Robert,
your...
may I interrupt you?
Yes, sir.
Mike Norris here.
Yes.
So I'm reaching my arm through the phone here for my envelope, but as long as I think my arm is, it's not working.
Well,
But number two, if I'm already on the portal
yes.
using my Microsoft account
Yes.
login,
Yes.
that's going to change.
That will change. We are not going to disconnect those that have connected. There are a small number of board members that have connected through that old process. We are not going to disconnect those right away. We're going to wait until you've had an opportunity to get your new credentials and access the portal with your new credentials before we sunset that old process. For those of you that have
And
connected.
the demo that you're getting ready to show right now, same screens, the same portal that I have access right now.
That is correct. That is correct.
Okay,
That is
that's
correct.
all. Thank you.
So, for those of you that have iPads, you will have a screen and it will log you in with your fingerprint. That's what that was. And so down at the bottom of the screen, you notice a little browser icon. You click on that browser, and I've already gone in. You will be brought to the home screen, and this is the board portal. And Mike, for you remotely, this is the portal that you access. So regardless of whether you access this on your home computer, a different iPad, this iPad that's been issued to you, it will look the same, and it will operate the same. Okay? Same portal. So, little orientation to the portal. Any announcements will be listed on the right-hand side of the portal. The schedule for the board meetings is on the right-hand side as well. Your navigation menu on the left will get you to all the documents that are part of the packets that get presented. And so you'll notice that there are two folders that you will primarily be concerned with. One is current documents. Now those are where you would normally go. Okay, so we're in 2019, so that's what you're going to see when you go in there. And I'll click on that. So you go into current documents, you'll see the 2019 documents are in there. And when you go into the 2019 documents, it's actually broken down by each board meeting. And so we'll go into the March, and you'll see the documents here. These documents are the same documents that are available in the board packet. Okay? They are the same. Now, there's also closed session documents. And so we have separate security on the closed session documents. Most everybody in the room, including the administrative staff and everyone, has access to the current documents and the archive documents. But only the board members that have specific access to the closed session documents will see that. Okay? So you just have to be aware that if you see that, not everybody has access to that. It's very specific based on your credentials as to whether you get access to that closed session documents folder or not. Okay? And if you don't have access to it, you're just not going to see it. It's just not there. And then like today, what I'll be doing is I'm going to sit on the side, and for those of you that are, walking past over here, there is a cord, and so I want you to be careful and don't trip over. But I'm going to sit right here, and I'm going to be, as we go through the packet today, I'm going to use this iPad and I'm going to go through. So you'll kind of get a feel for what this looks like and how this operates as we go through the board meeting today. Now, as always, I'm always around after the board meeting and during the dinner session. So if you got questions, you want technical support, I'm going to have a couple folks here who can actually help answer questions or help with any kind of technical issues. If you got iPads today, or if you have just general questions, we can answer those. Any questions about what we're doing? Now, what we do have a technical support line, but what we have done to streamline the process and make sure that you get the service you need is on your letter inside your envelope, your contact person is going to be Christina. Okay, Christina Rose Carter is going to be your contact. We're not going to have you go through the whole technical support line. Okay, she'll make sure she gets our team, the technical team, and gets any of your issues fixed as quickly and as expediently as possible. Okay? Any questions? All right. Thank you very much.
I would like to say that I appreciate the responsiveness of Christina. It's been very helpful, very timely. Really appreciate
I
it.
guess that thought really worked, huh? I'm teasing her. She is
Shot me on the
awesome.
spot.
She
She
is
is awesome.
awesome.
So very, very much
Thank you.
appreciate your efforts on that. Thank you.
All right, our next item on the agenda, I'd like to ask Michael Lavender, if he would, to come forward. Have a little something. Mike.
With that iPad, I noticed it's got my name on
We have good news, we have bad news. We have a plaque for Michael. Michael's served with us a number of years on Vaya, and Michael and I have a lot of stories to tell, but we won't bore you with them. Some are sort of horror stories from our days at Foothills. But this plaque, Michael, it says, presented to Michael Lavender, board member, advocate, friend, in grateful recognition of more than 30 years of service, from Foothills Area Program to Smoky Mountain LME, MCO, to Vaya Health. Your exemplary leadership and support helped improve the lives of individuals with behavioral health needs. Michael,
Thank you.
congratulations.
Before you say anything, sir, let me just jump in here. And man, I can't remember the last time I got a standing ovation. Pretty good. I was thinking about you last night, and I was hoping you were going to be here today. That's why I made that emergency phone call to him this morning just to make sure. So glad you showed up. And of course, trying to think of the perfect things to say, right? Because this is very, very heartfelt on my behalf. And as I thought about you and, all the memories from all over the years, and like Rick, so neither of us go to prison or have some infraction that Tracy would cite, remain silent on most of those. The things that came to mind most were my observation of you as a tremendous father and just a wonderful man. And everything else really secondary to that. How you've ever done 30 years of this, I don't get it. I mean, was there a math error? Or did you start when you were like 12 or? Math error? It can't be. It can't be. You've been willing to support things when they weren't popular. I can think of many times that was the case, because you knew they were the right thing to do. And I have a lot of regard for people that are willing to get their nose bloody for things they believe in. And you've done, I don't know how to encapsulate all that you guys done. I just don't. Way before my time with Foothills, and there's some folks that could probably attest to that. I'm very sorry to see you go. I understand why you are, and certainly you've had your turn and then some. I want to, from the bottom of my heart, thank you, because it's meant a lot to me.
Thank you. I appreciate the honor. Wasn't expecting this, but thank you. It's been a pleasure to serve with each of you, and at least those of you who aren't new. And Rick, going back a long way for the two of us, all the way back to Foothills in 2002. Yeah, it's been a while. And lots of iterations from Tom McDevitt days to Brian's days. But I think we're in better shape than we've ever been. There's a long road ahead with all the states doing. And I remember back when you and I were with Foothills, it was the whole privatization issue. And, once again, there's a new change. But I feel confident that both the board members who sit here and especially the staff who are working with you, that you're well suited to tackle the challenges that lie ahead. And I appreciate all that all of you do every day. Never said it enough, but you all are doing yeoman's work and hours that, Ashley, with all due respect, these guys put in more than anybody that works in county management, but we, well, that may not be the case actually, but close to it. But I really do appreciate all you guys do, and I miss being here most days, but good luck with all that lies ahead. And thank you to Ashley for stepping in, giving us representation from my home county.
Where are you going? At least stay for dinner.
I appreciate it, but my kids are waiting on some too. So I'm gonna take care of it.
Okay, our next item is the new member swearing in. So if the new members will stand.
We have two on the phone potentially.
Do we have two new members on the phone? Can you hear me?
Yeah, everything here. Yes.
Okay. Are you standing? How are we gonna know that you're standing? Does everybody have, the oath in front of them? Okay, I'll read and you follow along. I state your name. I'm sorry, you need to be raising your right hand. I didn't say that. Do solemnly swear that I will support and maintain the Constitution
That I will support and maintain the Constitution
and laws of the United States and of North Carolina,
And laws of the United States and North Carolina,
not inconsistent therewith,
not inconsistent therewith,
and that I will faithfully discharge the duties
and that I will faithfully discharge the duties
of my office as a board member of Vaya Health.
of my office as a board member of Vaya Health.
Congratulations.
All right.
Welcome aboard, everybody. Okay. Yes, as Tracy always, and just one note, we did have an orientation a couple weeks ago. Everyone participated, so welcome aboard, everyone. And challenges are here. Next item, the County Commissioner Advisory Board. We have nominated Ronnie Beal and Connie Orr. She's graciously agreed to serve on and the chair and vice chair. They're going to sort of tag team it. At this time, I'd like a motion from the board for those two board members to serve in that capacity. Both of them county commissioners.
So moved.
All right.
Second.
Second. Okay, we have a second. We have several seconds. Okay. All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
All right. Also want to let you know there is an executive committee vacancy, and we'll talk about that and fill that at our next meeting. In your packet, you also have a letter from Kevin Alston, the president-elect of the North Carolina Association of County Commissioners. And if you take a moment, take a look at it. Okay. All right, yeah, there is two letters. Everybody see that? One is asking us, Kevin's asking us to appoint members to this advisory board. Let's see, let me look for 1 second.
I think the first one was the announcement that there was going to be this process. And we wanted to include that one because it provides a bulleted, probably 10 or more bullets on there that lists the criteria that are supposed to be part of the consideration for the work of this group, which is, and I guess we should mention that, which is to make recommendations to the secretary regarding tailored plan regions, which is a mighty task. And you see Ronnie Beal is a co-chairman of this group. I think it talks about in one of the letters how the individual representatives were chosen or voted upon, or I guess it's kind of a more than one process perhaps on how people became, let's say, members of this committee. Paige Linnell is part of it as a function of being chair of the Health and Human Services Committee, is that correct?
That is.
And then Steve Smith must have gotten some kind of a positive recommendation from someone because he snuck in there too, right? So
You're well represented.
we are well represented. And I don't know that somewhere I think I might have the whole list of all the folks that are on. Essentially, I think we're trying to have at least 2 from each LME-MCO. And in some cases more, just depending on sort of these at-large nominations. And somewhere I have written down the dates of the meetings. I think they're going to be either 3 or 4. Does that sound about right?
Right now, it's a schedule of 4 physical meetings. Just try to find the list. Okay. You're right, I have the committee, it's actually just 1 from each, so the fact that we have 3 is pretty interesting. You have Catherine Green, the co-chair from Sand Hills, Ronnie Beal, obviously from here, Glenn Adams from Alliance Health, I'm sorry, so we've got a second from San Luis, David Adams from San Luis, Rob Boyette from East Point, Dave Brummett from Cardinal, Wally Overman, Trillium, Frank Zachary from Partners, Kitty Barnes from Partners, Kate Cashin. These were more NCACC appointments for consideration, so we had each LME MCO make those first 7 appointments. And then these are NCACC at large. So you have Kitty Barnes from Partners, Kate Cashin from Sandhills, Ophelia Munn Boynes from East Point, Gary Langley from Trillium, Ellen Rectal's Alliance, and Susan Rodriguez McDowell from Cardinal. So those are all county commissioners appointed there as well. And then our at-large ex officios would be Kevin Austin, the president-elect of the association, Kim Harrell, DSS Directors Association. She's from the Yadkin County, as is Kevin Austin, Steve Smith, Public Health Directors Association from Henderson County, and then Denise Foreman, Assistant County Manager out of Lake County. And we are meeting 4 times. Our first meeting begins on April 8th. And we are to conclude our work at the very latest by May 24th to meet the Secretary's June 1st deadline. That's what I have.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, do we have any time on the agenda to discuss that for just a minute? Do we have any time to discuss that for just a minute?
Yes, sir.
Well, as Paige pointed out, I think I'm on there by virtue of the North Carolina Health Directors Association. But I think Ms. Lamel and I are certainly very receptive to thoughts from staff and fellow board members. It's an interesting exercise, given that DHHS is already well-defined in 6 managed care Medicaid regions. And so I think one of the things I would anticipate is whatever the collective input of that group is, I think there'll have to be strong arguments to not be pretty closely conforming to those care regions as established today. Am I off base with that, Brian, from your staff interpretive side?
Yeah, I mean, I understand, and yeah, I was gonna talk about it as part of my
Okay.
thing,
Let's just
so you just go for it now?
Go for it.
This is a big deal. We've gotten a lot of conversation and meetings that the department has meetings with the LME, MCO, CEOs on a monthly basis now, and it's been a big agenda item spoken about yesterday. We had a meeting here before we knew you were part of all of this, Steve, with Ronnie and with Lanier, and just kind of thought through a lot of this. I understand the logic of thinking about it in terms of the health regions. However, I don't believe that is going to be the driving force. I think what will be the driving force is the existing LME MCO catchment areas, which do not correlate with those health regions. And I know we've shown you that map before. At the retreat, we spent quite a bit of time looking at that. And usually people scratch their head and say, how is none of this has anything to do with itself. So the history of this, let's start with that. In the earlier version of the legislation, there's actually House Bill 403. This was given to the Secretary to determine, which, given that they have the responsibility for making Medicaid transformation successful, and there are just a lot of variables, and if you just look at the bullets there, you start thinking about how complex an undertaking this is. And this isn't even in consideration of what is a financially viable size health plan to be a tailored plan. We're not even talking about what might be the most important thing of all, okay? we can't even state now. The original legislation was let the secretary figure this out, because the General Assembly didn't want to touch this with a 10-foot pole. So this is the first thing to appreciate, is that politically, this is just a nightmare. Just a nightmare. So the General Assembly thinks they're going to be really smart and just say, Secretary, good luck. Okay? At the 11th hour, there was a change in that legislation, and magically, the number said there was going to be between 5 and 7. And I will let you draw whatever conclusion you want about the political magic that occurred to result in that change in language. And that's how the final bill passed. So, to be determined by the secretary ultimately. So now, if you're the department, they're kind of backed into this corner of figuring out, how is this ever going to work out? Because no matter what you do, what you don't want to do, if you're the department, and again, I'm saying this without judgment, this is just political reality, is do you want to get in a squabbling match with members of the General Assembly about all of this when you're trying to get Medicaid transformation done, and when you're trying to get this whole Medicaid transformation done? No, you don't. So they're thinking, well, we'll let the counties recommend something, knowing that by and large, probably the General Assembly is not going to, this is the theory, get engaged over something that the county commissioners are going to do. And really, when you think about it, if you're a county commissioner and you're on this group, you're probably going to be concerned with maintaining the original status quo. I mean, would any of you want to see counties go away from us? Probably not. I hope not. Would you think it might be good if we got more counties? Sure, if that made sense. And you got a room full of people all thinking that same thing. So what is ever going to happen that's going to be different that everybody's going to decide to? It's like you have opposing forces that are going to, arguably result in no changes to things. And again, I'm not trying to say that I know what's going on. I think I'm stating the obvious here. Fair enough? So, it is quite a task, and I'm not sure, they were joking a little bit about this yesterday. Kevin really appreciated what he got himself into, and probably had more time to think about this, may not have been willing to take this on, because this is a tough job. It might lead you to believe that nothing's going to change, because it would be so challenging for that to be the case when you look at the criteria and you just think about the politics of it. That's what I would have to say about it.
Well, I appreciate the context and regret that that's repetitive for some years.
But,
So,
I'm happy, to give you any thoughts I have about any of this. And believe me, this has gotten a lot of discussion by the LME, NCO CEOs who see the threat here of this. You think of our own experience that, I described Kevin as being terrible. And I don't know what else other word to use, in regards to Rutherford. And just, a change like this at this point in the trajectory of Medicaid transformation, it just seems would be ill-timed. Which was essentially our recommendation to the Secretary all along. So I want to wish you all a lot of luck. And I get my chance to go and sit and talk, and actually Paige at your wonderful get-together down in Brevard. Kevin and I did have quite a chance to have a conversation. Just trying to figure out what to do. So, there you have it.
I guess for me, my fear is that the consumers are the ones going to be lost in all of this. Just like the consumers were lost in Rutherford County, they were not a part of Rutherford County, they were never considered when the decision was made. So this really concerns me as to where our consumers are going to be and where they're going to be a part of this whole mess and not be lost. And it becomes so political that everybody's fighting over something that they don't care about the consumers. Not the consumer they're fighting for. It's the dollars and all of that, and that's my biggest fear in this whole thing. I saw it in Rutherford County.
All right. Any other comments about that?
Look forward to your reports.
How things go. Also, I'd like to mention that Dr. Vaya is going to be stepping down as one of our board members. Dr. Vaya is a hospital representative, so that's going to have to replace him with a hospital representative. And we appreciate his service, but I wanted to bring that to your attention. Our next item is report of our Chief Executive Officer.
Yeah, well, I've been spouting on here a little bit, although I did intend to cover that either as as part of my agenda items or actually our County Commissioner Advisory Board meeting. I know Ronnie's not able to be here. Maybe somebody can kick shit for him on that. But certainly a lot of the conversation there also, Steve, I don't recall if you were there or not. But a lot of the agenda was around that at that meeting as well. We have a letter from Dot. Oh my gosh. Is that in the? Yeah. What a woman. For anybody that was there as part of the ceremony when we did the dedication, you can see the beautiful plaque there. Of course, the next day she, calls me and is just so thankful, and she said, well, I really think that you and Christine should have gotten an award for this. That's not how this works. But what a gracious, deserving woman, is all I can say. We included a copy of her handwritten letter, which is that style, to always be so thankful for anything that is done for her when she's done so much for everyone else. I wanted to be sure to share that. Legislative and DHHS updates. There have been so many, I confess to this at executive committee, so many bills that have emerged this last week that I haven't even kept track of them. Except for one, I think we slipped a copy of a big Senate bill. It's really just as much as anything a media article, which probably reads like the press release that the Senate did on their health care bill, Senate Bill 361. And if you haven't heard about it yet, this is really a fair, rendition of it, and it kind of describes the perspective of those in the Senate that look at this as their answer to Medicaid expansion versus another alternative that is really stating that, which I would say I would side with, that, all in all, this is a great thing to be expanding the number of slots for IDD individuals as part of that waiver. There are 12,000 people in the state on a waiting list. We have about 1,200 people on the waiting list. It doesn't mean that those folks don't get service, it just means that they don't have, the entire smorgasbord and budgeting associated with the waiver. It's great that the state would expand those number of slots to accommodate everybody on the waiting list. But that isn't Medicaid expansion. A lot of those folks already have Medicaid and receive other Medicaid services. But I understand, kind of the description. I guess you can decide for yourselves the extent to which that represents an expansion. of Medicaid, and it's an expansion of services to a needy population. So if you think of Medicaid expansion as that, it does check that box. However, there are thousands and thousands more people. The estimates are, the latest ones I've seen are between 500 and 600,000 individuals statewide that would benefit from Medicaid expansion. And who can tell me the population that would get the greatest benefit for this? Come on, this is an easy one. I always talk about this. Substance use. Substance use, right. With all the discussion around the opioid epidemic, just a tremendous benefit to being able to serve people. I mean, you hear me say this all the time. The biggest challenge we have probably as an organization is being unable to meet the need of individuals that do not have Medicaid with the amount of funding that is associated with single stream in-county support. And that does not mean I'm complaining about the money we get from counties. It just means that there is an enormous imbalance between the amount of money available to meet the need for individuals without Medicaid as compared to individuals that have Medicaid that we're able to provide services to. I carry around a laminated graph that just makes that apparent. And I confess repeatedly that there are thousands of people in our catchment area that go without care because we cannot fund the services that they need. That is just true. So, anyway, you can, should be in your packet.
We introduced it in executive committee meeting, so I will print copies for
Yeah, I heard that
everyone.
we
It's
don't
not in
have
there.
Okay, we'll be sure that you get that. Sorry about that. One other thing, and I know we have a lot of new members, we always cover legislation generally and, specifically those pieces of legislation that will have some impact on us. I, offer this kind of warning that, when we're early on in the session, try not to overreact to things because the changes that legislation undergoes as it goes back between, the House and the Senate and then the final versions is enormous. So while we keep track of things and we'll describe those changes, the impact, it's very early on and you have to pace yourself. That's always how I think of it. Otherwise, meeting yesterday with, and I was coming back from Nashville with the National Council Conference was excellent. On the phone for the monthly meeting with the secretary and the deputies, which is this monthly check-in on things. A lot of kind of where I see us getting to some endpoint on is a final agreement about the tailored plan population. And there's an intersection here with the rate negotiation that we have. We talked about really at length in Finance Committee. So we have this convergence of what is our population going to be once the standard plan starts. And remember, that's going to change 1, 2, 3 times essentially. Although really there are only 2 changes in the methodology. But there are 3 important milestones. Number 1, that change the funding that we get, that is our rate. And this is tremendously important to the organization and our budget. This is the capitation that we are paid on the Medicaid side of the house, which is probably north of $330 million. Okay, so it's what is multiplied by the population, the rate. Who's going to be left? Rutherford County leaves. We have 4 counties in phase 1 of standard plan startup. You know what I mean by that? Okay? And then that's in November. And in February, we have the rest of our counties that are in phase 2 for standard plan startup. So we have these 3 factors that will very significantly cause our rate to be recalculated. So to say that we are on pins and needles waiting and working very closely with the state around that negotiation for rate is an understatement. We expect to hear sometime this month. And Clark deserves credit for submitting some very precise information about why we believe last year the rate was inaccurate. And when we think of the rate, we think of both the money for services and the money for administration. We're underwater on both of those, and we will be by the end of the year. It's predictable, and we said we would be last year because we said this is not accurate. So we're doing everything we can to submit information to result in a favorable rate adjustment for this coming year in the midst of these enormous changes that will impact our rate anyway. And that is the best way I can make what is a very complicated scenario simple. Those are the big ticket items. Any questions on things? Oh, I should mention, there was a Health and Human Services Committee meeting Tuesday morning, Wednesday morning? Wednesday morning, yeah, yesterday morning. And a big presentation done by Steve Owen that, among other things, talked about the solvency methodology and evaluation of that, and I know we've talked about that. The thing that you should remember about that is that there are some very, very big factors in that methodology that we object to and have done so continuously for a period of time. In fact, the department wrote a report back to, I guess, Fiscal Research, which is the arm of the General Assembly that does all the financial calculations. Number one, that they are including risk reserve in the calculation of spendable cash for us. That is erroneous as per general statute and our contract. So why that would be part of the methodology to be considered essentially spendable money is incorrect. Okay? We also believe it is incorrect to think that 15 days of cash would be an acceptable amount of cushion. I mean, we've been over this time and time again. You are involved with your county finances. You have your own businesses you run. 30 days is probably not sufficient, but yet that is the kind of the number of days that we have tried to say is the absolute bare minimum. Even though it probably isn't. And it pretty much coincides, I think, with the local government commission requirements. So anyway, that report that he presented showed us below the line in terms of solvency, which I looked at that very quickly in the morning as I was getting ready to do some other things. No, that's not right, because when they did that calculation, somehow we were above the line, which we were at that point in time. And again, it's like this point in time, they do the snapshot, and we were by just a few $1 million. Well, the irony of this is if they were to do it now in today's dollars, we're below the line. We have insufficient cash. So they misrepresented it in the report. Steve Owen's going to issue a new corrected report that will show us being over the line. And I have no idea how any of this will kind of reverberate out there, but just so you're aware of all of that. The fact that they use financial data from June 30th of last year, if you were a legislator, why wouldn't you question that? You know, all I can do is give you the facts, and so that you're prepared should anyone ask you about any of this. But a lot of these things don't really seem to be the right way to be reporting information like this. So you have my thoughts on that. I'm just like Mr. Good News, aren't I?
You
Okay,
keep hitting
well-
your head against a brick wall. Keep saying the same thing over and over and over to
Well-
them, but they just either don't hear it or they don't want to hear it.
Okay, at this time, we need to go into closed session pursuant to North Carolina General Statute 143, 318, 11A, in order to prevent the disclosure of competitive healthcare information that is privileged or confidential pursuant to North Carolina General Statute 122C, 126.1, or not considered a public record within the meaning of Chapter 132 of the General Statutes to consult with attorneys pursuant to North Carolina General Statute 143, 318, 11A3. Is there a motion to go into closed session?
So moved.
All right, motion and a second. All in favor say aye. Aye.
They're getting my ass whipped about explaining essentially why we didn't have any money to add to the 1.4. I mean, there was like, about another $2 million that were needed to do the kind of project that they thought they were gonna do. So I had to explain, no, we don't have the money to do that, and here's why. So what I would do is give you, and there's a number of ways to do this, but what I would propose to do is to email you those slides, for example, and then you have your own way of talking about that. I usually find that's the best way to do this. I mean, how's that sound to you?
That sounds good.
And again, it's not, the whole point of the way I've tried to reduce this is it's very understandable, but then you put your words to it. So I will make a note to do that, and then we could speak as early as tomorrow if you wanted to just kind of reality test any of that with me. And we've done the same thing with Ireland. So, anybody else that would like that, I'll do the same for you.
Yeah, I think we,
Okay, okay, and again, I'll, yeah, great.
I don't know how many folks said they're interested, but why don't we just get it out to all of us?
Yep, we'll do that. And then please, when I say, please call me, and, just use my cell phone or email me, and I'll, whatever amount of schooling you need. The key is for you to be conversational in being able to talk about this. Okay?
Exactly.
So that you just understand it yourself in a way that you can talk as plainly as if you're talking to your neighbor about, who's gonna be in the NCAA finals, they're gonna be Duke or Chapel. Okay?
Well, and depending on with whom we are speaking, we might even have to be plainer or simpler than that.
Right? So that's a good goal. Thank you very much for asking for that. I will work on that.
All right. Our next item on the agenda is report of the Finance Committee and Chief Financial Officer, Mark Phillip.
Thank you, Rick. The committee reviewed several documents, as is our habit during the committee meetings. We started with the comparative balance sheet, noting that the total assets were essentially the same at the beginning of the year. There was a small decrease, about $1 million in liabilities, and about a small increase of $1 million in fund balance. The major item being the reduction in cash of about $9.4 million. We then moved on to the cash flow statement, which is document number 2, which details out some of the reasons for the reduction in cash over the year-to-date period. So it's largely, at least significantly driven by the loss in the income net loss of $3.2 million. There's also a receivable that has grown from the state of about $4.1 million, and the accounts payable, we had paid down about $2.1 million. Those are the major items contributing to the $9.4 million reduction in cash. We then discussed document number 3, which is the current ratio and the defensive interval. The current ratio is about 2.5 to 1, which is about what it was at the end of the last fiscal year. The defensive interval has continued to decrease. That is the cash divided by the per day service and administrative expenses. We're down to about a little over 45 days. We take a look at that and compare ourselves to our sister LME MCO plans. If you look at, we changed the algorithm a little bit. We take the cash and we subtract out the accounts payable and the IBNR, as well as the payable remaining around single stream funds, and take a look at the days in cash of our sister LME MCOs. We have several of us that are below 30 days. There's one at 17, one at 29, and Vaya is at 23. There are about 4 others that are above the 30-day limit, but there are some significant LME MCOs besides us that are below the 30-day limit. That kind of led to a discussion around solvency. Brian's already updated you on the solvency discussion that occurred during the committee. And if you'll move on to document number 4, which is the income statement summary, I would move you down to the line that's kind of in peach, the first line that's in peach. That is the surplus or deficit from operations before any effect of Medicaid risk reserve revenue. On the Medicaid line of business, we've lost about $7.9 million. Year to date, on the non-Medicaid line of business, we've made about 4.7, for a total of about $3.2 million for the entity. When you add back in the risk reserve revenue, even though we can't touch it, that takes our loss on the Medicaid side to about $4 million. There's no impact on the non-Medicaid, and that takes the entity loss from a loss of $3.2 million to a profit of $700,000. Just by way of comparison, other LME MCOs, one has lost $20 million, one has lost $22 million, one has made 3, one has lost 4, one has lost 14, and one has made 25, compared to our loss of 3. To move on to
The $25 million gain is an anomaly related to the hurricane. Seriously, it's probably a $30 million bubble.
If you'll move on to the next document, which is document number 5, that's the medical loss ratio. We had this spike at the beginning of the year, which related to the state recouping money that they should not have recouped from us, but as you can see that as they paid that back and made those corrections, that medical loss ratio has come down and is on a decent trend downward the last 3 or 4 months. If you, the medical loss ratio of 94.7% includes the healthcare quality improvement activities of about 4.3%. So the service expenses relative to the service revenue, the medical loss ratio is about 90.4%. If you'll move to the next document, which is the medical service, the Medicaid service budget line by line item, you can see down at the bottom our unfavorable variance to the budget is about 93 cents PMPM. Once again, that has come down, as we saw in the previous graph. In November, that was about $2.14 PMPM. In December, it was $2 PMPM. So once again, we're on a reasonably good trend there. And that kind of completes the financial report review. I don't know if there are any questions related to that, and if not, we'll move on to the budget revision.
The Medicaid revenue, total service revenues is significantly under budget across why again?
For two reasons. We're slightly below the budget in terms of the number of members. We think that will catch up, although may not catch up fully by year end. There's also a mix change. If you look at the percentage of members that we have that are getting high intensity services and therefore larger capitations, we have less of those than we anticipated, and we have more people at the lower intensity end, which we get less capitation for.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions? Hearing none, is there a motion to approve the financial reports?
So moved.
I have a motion, do we have a second?
Second.
Any more discussion? All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Okay, and if you will review budget revision number 5, I'll discuss the significant items in that budget revision. If you look at the item that relates, that is, has the amount of $2,053,457, that roughly $2 million is really the result of two items. We are increasing the revenue and increasing the expense. $1.4 million of that relates to the Wilkes County facility-based crisis expansion. So we received the allocation. We're recognizing the receivable of the revenue, and we'll also recognize the anticipated expense in the budget. The other item is the approximately $2.6 million reduction. Back in earlier this fiscal year, we got a $3.1 million return of single stream funds that related to the previous year. We booked that in the revenue side, and then I think probably erroneously booked it to the expense side under administration. We are now pulling that out of the administrative expenses and taking it up as a reduction to the fund balance. So we're actually taking that really to the fund balance as opposed to expenses. That $3.1 million is offset by approximately $500,000 of other expenses. Half of that is related to the InfoNC contract regarding case management, and then there's about $200,000 of additional reconfiguration and repairs that we're doing to this building. So those are the main items related to the proposed budget revision. Any questions around those?
If there's not any questions, is there a motion to approve budget revision number 5? We have a motion, is there a second?
Second.
Nancy, second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, thank you very much. Our next item, regulatory compliance and quality committee report. Jack?
You all have a quality packet, quality report in your packet. Any questions? No, you're not that lucky. Here we go. All right. TCLI dashboard summary. This is one of the super measures. We're required to be at 100%, and last report was November. We were at 95.8%, and the projections are that we'll be short in December and in January. Because it is a super measure, it's going to cost us some money. Fortunately, it's based on a percentage of how we failed on the super measure, so hopefully it won't cost us a lot of money. But in spite of plans that are in place right now to improve that number, the projections are that we'll continue to be shy of the 100% mark. Let's see, this is a different packet. This is the super measures update on page 5. In super measures, there has been a change in how the TCLI is counted. It used to be that we had to add 40-something slots a year. We had to add, 70-something slots a year, so it came out to like 6.8 slots per month. But now, we're counted on how many we house versus how many depart. So if they depart because they died, or if they depart because they did so well that they left the TCLI program and are living independently, it don't matter. That still counts against us. So as you see in the chart, the numbers for people who have separated are sometimes larger than the people who are housed, and putting us either at zero or negative numbers. So this is going to be a difficult super measure for us to hit. Once again, this goes back to the same plan of corrections that Marvin has in place, but this is one that we're going to have to keep an eye on, and we're going to have to be smart about, because it's going to be a difficult target to hit, and it's going to cost us money. The other super measures we are doing okay on. In the compliance log, we were short of targets in the non-Medicaid population. A quality project was undertaken to address this and has already started. And so the next time we see this report, we expect it to be improved. One of the major challenges of this particular access to care report is the prison population. There is no law, there is no financial reward for the prison system to coordinate with mental health on being sure that there's adequate follow-up. So there are, the recidivism rate is high. We know that a large portion of the inmate population have behavioral health problems. So this is an area that I would hope would be addressed in the legislature, but once again, it is the prison system, so it will not be a high priority for anybody. But that's going to be one of our major challenges that is going to be difficult to change. NCQA is coming. Our folks who are working on NCQA are on target with their calendar. They expect that by the spring of 2020, we'll have our first review and response from the NCQA. Right now, they're in the process of negotiating and learning whatever details they can, because any of you who've worked with NCQA know that a lot of times their regulations are a little bit vague or generic until you get your report and they specifically nail you on what you did wrong. Monthly MCO comparisons. I think the important one is that both for non-Medicaid and for Medicaid services, Vaya has the best penetration rate, the best rate of service to the community. There you go. No, let's see. Let's see, I've got page 46. Yeah,
46.
Yeah, there it is. So we're in the green over there on the far right. That's for our non-Medicaid, and the following graph is for Medicaid. And you see that we lead all MCOs in our penetration rate, which is something to be proud of. The LVMCO call center access to care performance report. In the non-Medicaid population, we have fallen short in one category with regard to services provided within 14 calendar days. And that's present in this quarter and also in the last reporting quarter, which, by the way, is, back last year, both of them last year. There is a plan in place to improve that. With regard to complaints and grievances, we are still seeing a trickle down in our rate, not a trickle down, but, well, we're still seeing a rate that was above what we had a couple of years ago. And that rate had a big bump in it when the resource allocation model came from Raleigh. And services were, service definitions were changed and people's services were changed or denied. And that gave us a big bump. It's still coming down, but we are still apparently feeling the effects of that. The other thing that gives us bad marks on grievances seems to be when there's a new program or a new number of beds approved or slots approved, an announcement goes out that they're approved, people expect that right away they're eligible, even though it takes a while to get these programs implemented and to get the people assigned into these slots. So right away, people say, well, there's this program and nobody told me about it, I'm not in it, and the grievance rate goes up. That does come down as those slots are filled. Reconsiderations are reviewed. That's when a case is denied, then they can have a reconsideration. 76% of our reconsiderations are upheld. And in the ones that are overturned or partially overturned, most of the time that those cases involve obtaining additional clinical information, so that maybe there wasn't enough evidence to approve the service on the first go-round, but because in the reconsideration process, we ask for more clinical information, and frequently that does qualify people that previously were not. So that remains a low rate. In fact, the rate of reconsiderations overturned is decreasing. So that's a good report. I know you all like good news. And the last item, the IDD services dashboard. Based on our Medicaid population, we should have about 16,000 cases of IDD. Not all of those are going to want services from Vaya. Statewide, 15% of people that are qualified to serve, and Vaya is 17%. That maybe has a little room to grow, but basically is probably doing as good a job in terms of penetration as we can expect. So I'm proud of the job that Vaya is doing. I think that the Quality and Regulatory Compliance Committee is on top of things, and they gave us a good report. I'm confident that we'll have better numbers next week.
Thank you.
Questions?
Thank you. Next item on the agenda, Consumer and Family Advisory Committee report. Pat McGinnis.
We held local meetings in March. Lenore was March 11th, Sylva March 12th, Asheville March 18th, and Boone March 19th. In addition to our regular agenda items, we discussed Medicaid transformation and received information about the 2018 gaps analysis report and the 2019 Community Needs Assessment Survey. We are very excited to welcome Ashley to the board, and she represents the voice of people with substance use disorder lived experience. She's very involved in her community and is eager to learn and contribute to decisions that impact members and their caregivers. And you're from the Boone area, correct?
That's correct.
Several of the Vaya CFAC members are going to attend a statewide CFAC meeting hosted by Sandhills in Greensboro on Monday. I believe there are about 10 of us signed up to go. Special guests will be Dave Richards and Kathy Nichols from DHHS and Victoria Witt from the Sandhills Center. The Vaya CFAC Steering Committee will meet in Lenore on April the 8th, and local meetings will be held in May on 13th for Lenore, the 5th or the 14th for Sylva. Asheville would be the 20th, Boone would be the 21st. And as always, We love to have board members come and go with us places or come to our meetings. Rick goes with us frequently when we go to a statewide meeting or something. And, you know, feel free to come to any meeting in your area or a meeting that's out of your area. We love to have guests come, so especially board members. Thank you.
Thank you.
CPAC appreciates all the support we get from the board and staff, and I think we've got one of the best CPACs in the state.
Thank you, Pat.
Nancy, you got anything else?
No, it sounds like you covered it pretty good, thanks, Pat.
Next item on the agenda is Jeannie Duncan. Are you still on the line? Say that.
She's happy.
Okay. Couple other items. In your package, you have a Narcan purchase resolution. Has everyone had a chance to take a look at that? If you have any questions about it, Mr. Coward here, Jay could answer them, I'm sure.
It's just a quirk in the law that since Narcan is only produced by one company, rather than bidding three other types of bids, the board just votes to go ahead and contract directly with Narcan, but it does take board action in order to do that.
Thank you to everyone who did a video this evening, and I know many of the folks who are county commissioners did so at the county commissioner advisory board meeting.
Is there a motion to approve the resolution?
So moved.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor of the resolution, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, thank you very much. New members, you have a form of board member information profile. If you would fill that out and return that to Christina Rose.
The new members did it at orientation. This is actually for
Okay.
all of the other members.
All the other.
We have changed our mileage reimbursement and stipend request procedure. So now at each meeting, you will come see me and sign one sheet to request mileage reimbursement and a stipend for your trip. But in order for it to work, we need to have accurate information on file from the director.
I've already failed this. Is this a pass-fail form or? It's open book. It's open book.
We're making you take the test again.
The term,
You have to
term,
take the test.
I can fill in the term for you if you do not know it.
and the board
I
seat
needed you
appointment?
to, I needed.
For life. For life.
Life sentence.
I know my social security number.
All right, is there any other business? Hearing none, is there a motion to adjourn?
I make a motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor say aye. Thank you very much.
Aye.